Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. We thought it was important that we offer some context to what we saw yesterday with the reaction in the community with our vehicles being attacked. Let me just go back to Monday night on April the 8th. Our officers received a 911 call on a domestic call there at 1572 Hardee Street. Upon the arrival, officers spoke with an individual by the name of Patricia Jenkins. She stated that she had been assaulted by an ex-boyfriend who had just recently gotten out of prison on a drug charge on March the 20th, 2013. There were physical signs that she had been assaulted with an abrasion over her right eye. They also received a description of the individual that that had assaulted her. After an exhaustive search in the Edgewood Court apartment complex, they also had an opportunity to see this particular person by the name of, Otavius McGee, who was seen in the park just across from the location. The officers, after a foot pursuit, was able to capture the individual, placing him under arrest. And as they were walking back to the location with the individual, he went limp, and the officers had to physically carry him to the patrol car. As we were doing the search after the incident to that arrest, there were a total of 56 individual bags of suspected marijuana that was recovered on his body, along with $400 in cash. Ms. McGee was charged with domestic violence, battery, obstruction, possession with the intent to distribute and transported to DeKalb County Jail. Ms. McGee's friend, while he was in custody, while during the process of the arrest, Curry Hill was in the area inciting and yelling obscenities at the officers, and ultimately began to be physical against the officers that was making the arrest on that scene. He was ultimately, our officers deployed their OC gas spray and physically arrested Mr. Hill after not being able to bring him to subduing him with just this spray. Later on, Miss Jenkins, Nakia Jenkins, attempted to push the officers off the individual, and she was later charged as well. Ms. Jenkins was charged with obstructing law enforcement officers, and Mr. Hill was charged with 5 counts of obstruction of a law enforcement officer. Now, last night on the 9th, our officers were in the area, patrolling the area as normal, and they came up on a large group of individuals who was there. We later found out they were actually doing a protest against the arrest the previous night. As you saw in the results of our video, we had 2 vehicles that was damaged, with individuals began to pelt it with bricks, hammers, and also their fists. We made a decision, the officers made a decision to move back out of the location to reassess the situation as opposed to continue to escalate that situation. At the location where we moved back to, our officers were able to recognize 3 individuals who was there videotaping our actions as one of the individuals that had pelted the vehicle, and 1 arrest was made at that location. Now, as it relates to where we are with this investigation, there have not been a formal complaint against our officers at this time. Our major, the precinct commander in Zone 6, have reached out to the family members of this particular person that was arrested. They provided some information that they were going to be coming to the Office of Professional Standard to make a statement. They have not done that as of yet. However, we've started a formal investigation to determine if there was any misconduct on behalf of our officers. It is important for us to also state that we have really experienced a great relationship with the community there in that area. Our officers have continued to have a great relationship in patrolling that community, continue to try to drive crime down in that community. So that's our statement. we are here to offer ourselves for any questions that you have at this time.
Chief, I think by now all of us have seen the video. One of the family's complaints today was that at what point does that stop? At what point should he have been under control by officers, and the force that happened after he was asked to leave? At what point should that have stopped in your view?
Well, when he became subdued, after the individual was actually physically restrained, the action should have stopped. I think if you look at the information that you received, the individual was continuing to resist the arrest. And as I said, we've formalized an investigation. Any information on wrongdoing, we will investigate it and deal with those officers appropriately.
The OCD spray is used, obviously.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to start back over.
The OCD spray, pepper spray, is used as a non-lethal.
That's correct.
When it was used on Mr. Hill, apparently, according to the witnesses, there were lots of other people around, children around. They may have gotten a blast of this too. Is there a department policy about when, where, what circumstances an officer is supposed to use that kind of spray?
Well, no. What we do, we talk to our officers about a non-lethal force on subduing an individual. In the heat of a situation, our officers have those various different techniques or tools to use to subdue an individual. At the time of the case, the officers were at very close quarters as well. The officer selected to utilize his OC spray as opposed to any other method. As you know, there was also some striking with the baton on the individual as he continued to resist. So that's up to the individual officer, depending on the situation that he finds himself in.
Chief, what in
or
your
she.
mind would rise to the level of wrongdoing on the part of your officers, given the video that you've seen?
Well, we need to look at all of the testimony around that, the investigation. Clearly, we do not ever want to put our officers in any harm's way. It was clear that we were there for a legitimate reason. Listen, we respond to that community on a regular basis in communities all over the city, and we do not receive the kind of reaction that we received. We've had more than 788 calls in that community since January of 2012, and we can give you the breakdown on what those calls were. But the fact is, we're there regularly without this kind of action on behalf of citizens. So it is important for us to talk about the context of this. There was something that created this situation to be different from the other 788 calls that we received there since January of 2012.
People saying not today that they were pretty outraged by what they witnessed and thought to be an overreaction by police as they tried to subdue and put the handcuffs on Mr. Hill.
Well, we have to talk about also the context of the call. There were a large crowd of individuals that the officers felt unsafe, that they requested additional units and really requested a help call to subdue the area because the crowd began to be very, very outraged on the actions. Now, obviously, everybody didn't know why we were there. It was clear that we were there for a legitimate reason. We were called there because of domestic complaint. And so what happens in the arrests, the individuals that saw that began to react in the way that they did. We can't control that. What we have to do is try to control the situation that we've been called out to.
Chief, you mentioned that you've been there more than 788 times since January of 2012. You've never had a reaction like that in those calls that you're aware of. Does the fact that you have that reaction from the community, you kind of take it the other way, does that also tell you that there may be something worth looking into?
Absolutely. Well, I need to restate that. We had 718 calls. 718 calls since January of 2012. And out of those calls, 222 of those calls were fight calls in that community. 4 persons were shot calls, 4 individuals that were stabbed, 18 persons injured calls, 3 drug calls, 7 robbery calls, and 64 shots fired calls at the location. So that's the context of the calls that we've received there since January of 2012.
Are there going to be more arrests?
Well, we are continuing to do the investigation on the assaults that was actually perpetrated on the vehicles as well.
So you have suspects?
I can't tell you the details of that investigation, but we're still working that.
So just to follow up on that, you were starting to tell me that the fact that this may, in context, the crowd may have had something worth listening to.
Well, let me just say this. We have reached out, we are continuing to reach out to the community to have a meeting to talk to the community folk that are in that area. I want you also to understand that a lot of the individuals that created this engagement yesterday was not members of this community. We want to make sure that you understand that. We're looking to talk to those individuals that live in that community, that have a desire for us to have a conversation with them and meet with them about how we police that community more appropriately. And so that's what we'll be looking to do with our community liaison officers, as well as our Zone 6 precinct commander and the officers that are assigned to that precinct.
There are flyers kind of blanketing that community right now, sort of anti-police oriented flyers. Is your sense that those are being done by groups outside of the direct community as well? And how do you combat that? Because that obviously could just lead to more protests, more marches, more turmoil.
Well, you know, we have no desire to escalate this situation. What we hope to do is meet with the community to move forward to resolve this so that we can continue to protect our citizens and that community. As it relates to the flyers, we know that they are there. We're looking to meet with legitimate folk that are in that community. We're looking and asking for those community leaders to come forward so that we can have those conversations.
Chief, can you just talk about how the kind of the tightrope y'all have to walk? Because we were there this afternoon, we hear from some people who say, y'all are too much, we see y'all too often, it's too intense. And then I hear from other people too who say, yeah, there's floating craps games and drug dealing at the playground, and we want to see more of you. Just how difficult is it for y'all as a department to try and walk that tightrope?
Well, that is always a challenge when every community that we're faced with and trying to resolve issues that, quite frankly, the numbers that I just gave you are quite disturbing. It should be disturbing to any citizen of our city, but these are legitimate 911 calls that are coming into our center, not that we respond to other than people are calling 911 and complaining. So citizens inside of that community are concerned about the status that they are forced to live in because of the criminal elements that exist in that community. We work closely with the community and the apartment complex managers to work with them to determine what is the most appropriate way to try to deal with that. It's clear to us that we have to continue to have dialogue with those the neighborhood and also with the managers of that apartment complex to really rid those individuals that have no need to be in that community out of that community.
So just to sum up, what are the next steps at this point in time that you guys are taking? Because obviously, if you're here speaking to us, this is a serious matter.
Yes. Well, our community liaison lead, Alice Johnson, and also the community liaison COPS office will be reaching out for community leaders so that we can move this community forward and begin to talk on how we move this forward. And not in a controversial way, but being able to bring people to the table so that we can resolve issues as opposed to escalate them.
Does the situation require immediate diffusal? I mean, is there something that needs to be done to sort of...
Well, I think that's what you've seen. Obviously, we made a decision to move out of that location yesterday to de-escalate the actions that was being moved forward towards the police. It is our opinion that that was the right thing to do as opposed to escalating the action and playing it by ear to allow that community to defuse, if you will. And I think that's what happened. We believe that there are some other things that we have to do. We've talked about moving forward with meetings that will allow us to have a great dialogue so that we can begin to try to move forward with some true resolution.
Will you handle subsequent calls any differently than you did before?
Well, I mean, it depends on the neighborhood. All calls are dealt with differently. Now, in this particular community, we will be dealing with it differently. We'll make sure that there's a sergeant as well as 2 officers that will respond to any call that go out into that community. Clearly, we will not move away from that community. It's our job to protect and serve those citizens that has a legitimate outcry on what's going on in their community. So, but we have to make sure that we secure and protect our officers as well. And so our response time may be a little short because we've got to make sure that we have the appropriate resources going into that community until further notice.
Chief, are you concerned for your officer's safety?
I am. That's why we've changed our policies and making sure that we have multiple units that will respond to any 911 call as well as a supervisor.
Chief, we had 718 calls since January 2012. None of them escalated like this. Is it y'all's feeling that this, I don't want to say incited, or the different element in this is an outside group?
Well, that is still yet to be determined. We just know that there was a different reaction than we have normally had in responding to calls in that community. And so that concerns us, and that's why we're in front of you today.
And are you guys actively trying to figure out who that outside group might be?
We are, yes. That's it. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you for coming.